that means that you get pleasure out of it, right? So I agree with you that he would say that without that love, this good citizenship becomes a burden, and you have to sort of force yourself to do it. And Aristotle doesn't think that's excellent anymore. It has to be something that you find enjoyable to engage in, satisfying to engage in, right? And love is the key to that. So it's not entirely left out. It was left out of my talk. It's not left out of those philosophers. Right.
Yeah, I think that perhaps for a child or an adult who's severely disabled,
Right.
Perhaps their goal of living well is to teach others about themselves.
Would you summarize that?
Yes, for people who are disabled, back to this very important topic, their goal should be to teach others about themselves.
Correct.
About what this disability
not
means.
Not about the disability.
Oh, no?
But
oh, I see. Okay.
If you're a disabled person
Yeah.
and I'm with you in whatever capacity,
Yeah,
I am
right.
learning more about myself because
Oh.
of you.
Oh, I see. So, and why would that be? Sorry. Why would you learn more about yourself by being in the
Well,
association?
an example is the children with severe disabilities being in our schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of the children within the schools then have an association with the children with disabilities. So they are no longer afraid of this disability, so they learn about them.
Okay.
So you learn greater compassion, etc.
All right. So in schools, by having children disabled mixed with the children who don't have the disabilities, the children who don't have the disabilities learn to accept that as you know, some people are like that, and it's just part of what one needs to accept in life, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. As a parent of children, I would think that as my children are getting older, and we start talking about, gee, what will I do with my life kind of thing, I would be very disappointed if my children only said, well, I want to do something to be happy.
Yes.
Or if they said, well, I want to do something so that my friends and I can be happy.
Right.
I think both of those are important, but I also think more important is setting a goal, developing a passion and setting a goal to really do something in this life.
All right. So she's saying that if she were advising children about how to direct their lives, she wouldn't think it was very adequate to simply say, well, I'm just going to try to be happy and make my friends happy. Rather, they should be developing a passion and setting some sort of goal that they want to achieve and then work for that. Would you say that the goal matters, though? I mean, suppose that...
I think the goal has to be like moral and everything that we've talked about here.
Oh yeah,
but it has to be something to
immorality out of it. Yeah, right.
Correct.
So
yeah.
right. So, but I mean, so I want to, you know.
But they have to achieve something.
I'd like to be a very good waiter.
You got a long way to go.
I'm not sure that that's enough. I don't know. Maybe for some people it is enough.
Yeah. Well, this raises this whole question of whether the sorts of,
That's right.
whether the sorts of achievements can be ranked.
Right.
Really,
Depending where you start.
in terms of what's admirable.
Right.
I
And
think
not
that
saying that a
something-
waiter is not good or that a waiter's life is not valued. I'm not saying that at all.
No, I wasn't
No.
saying it either. No, I wasn't saying it either.
No.
But it seems to me to fall short of the target of excellent life somewhere. Yeah.
And is that what the Greeks would have said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. She's got.
Okay.
Sorry.
I believe that excellence and the art of living is a moving target. And let me tell you, I don't look at it the same way today as I did however many years ago. But I want to change the topic here, and I want to start out by saying I wake up every morning and I am extremely happy. And I read the newspaper to see why I should be depressed. And I want to talk about what was in the journal in describing this, where it said something about we're going to talk about the meaning of the excellence of life when some people think it's the government's job to make them happy. Did you say that, or who said that? But that was in the paper. Am I saying it correctly?
No, what I said was it could very well be argued that the government has the job of facilitating citizens approaching some sort of excellent life.
Well, let's talk about that then.
How would they do that?
Let's talk about that. Because I want to know how you think they can do that.
Oh.
Their government?
Yeah.
Yes.
And why is it their job to make me happy?
Well, I didn't say quite that. What I didn't say was that I mean, you facilitate by providing good education, by providing health care, by making sure that knowledge is readily available in libraries and in the media, things of that sort. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, please.
My knowledge of philosophy is pretty limited. I'm curious to know if you can tell me what philosophers in general might say about meaning, more specifically personal meaning. Because why I'm raising that question is because there was a comment earlier about people, for example, who experience much suffering. Well, Viktor Frankl, for example, derived much meaning from his experiences in concentration camps during the Second World War. So I'm just kind of curious to know what role meaning played. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. Our question is what role does meaning play? Does a person need to find meaning in their life in order to lead an excellent life? Well, so far as I understand that, I mean, it amounts to saying, does a person find their life significant? Yeah, I think that, the philosophers would agree that you need to be able to find your life significant. But there are various ways of doing that, right? And some of these ways are better than others. I mean, so that it's the ways which, and where we find significance in something that's, what would we say, objectively meaningful, right? Something which has a lot of import and good effect, well, maybe on lots of people's lives, or the lives of the community, the life of the community as a whole, etc. That's the kind of significance that they would think makes a life really excellent. Mm-hmm. And of course, yes, I mean, but feeling that your life is significant is part of the whole business of enjoying it, right? I mean, so it fits in with the subjective side of living excellently as well.
Is that satisfactory to you? As a starting point.
Yeah.
I suggest that, in the rest of the cafes in this series, a number of these issues, of course, are going to be addressed in substantive ways. Yeah.
We're quickly approaching a time in our human history where we're very much able to manipulate the human brain. Things like love, trust, feelings can all be almost input into the human brain at this point from a neurological standpoint. We're really getting to the point where we're really starting to understand how people's brains work and breaking down the mechanic aspects of it. Now, seeing as how if you can input love and other feelings into the human brain, and you want to talk about the environment around you as it stands right now, and how all those factors play into your own life, doesn't it come down to the ingrained point that it's one's own self-consciousness, how the brain reacts outward, the feelings it feels from within reacting outward? Like the one guy talked about charity and how that was an important factor. I think it becomes, the excellence has to come from within the brain itself. Like you can input love, you can input satisfaction, you can input all those feelings into the brain. But what the brain produces itself and pushes outward in the world is what's going to make one's life excellent. Now you could talk about, you know, people coming from different backgrounds, the ghetto, being rich kings. There's been plenty of people who became kings and did absolutely nothing important with their time. They got drunk and they slept with a lot of women. And there's people who came from the ghetto and constantly tried to push their community higher. Now, we're at the point now where we take a lot of statistics on things from people from the ghetto, literacy rates, all that, people who manage to push themselves out. And for all I know, you can look at it like an ant colony, with all the little ants walking in line, and then you have the 1 or 2 ants who choose to go off on their own path. Now, I think it's important to make the distinction on whether those ants are going off on their own, you know, whether their brain is reacting outward and they're choosing to take that path, or whether that's being forced on them by another ant from the society around them.
Okay, his point, yeah, this is an interesting point, and the Stoics have an interesting reply to it. He's saying that a lot of the factors we've discussed, like love, are things which can be programmed into the brain. And of course now we think about sticking electrodes in your brain or doing something funny like that. But Aristotle would just talk about the conditioning which goes on in early childhood, and he thinks that love of noble things is introduced then through conditioning. So, all right, so, but doesn't that mean that what's really important is, what did you say, the brain itself?
The brain,
Self-consciousness.
Self-conscious, may the frontal cortex or whatever it is.
Through better pharmacology.
Yeah, no, it's got to deal with this, right? And it's going to deal with it in a certain way. And this is what's really important. It's how you deal with what you had no control over getting in the first place that constitutes whether you're living an excellent life or not, right? The Stoics agree with you entirely. I recommend that you read Epictetus. He's entirely on your side in this. The only thing which counts toward your living excellently is what you do with that mind there that works on the things which have been given to you and which you had no control over in the first place. Absolutely, that's his view of it. It also goes to Tony's older point, and that is that since the circumstances in which you grew up, the circumstances in which you live, luck, the disabilities from which you suffer, etc., you didn't have any control over that. All right. It's what you do with those circumstances, right, that constitutes whether you're living excellently or not. And of course, some people aren't going to achieve anywhere near as much as other people, but this may just be because the other people lucked out, right? They got the right programming in childhood, they developed in the right circumstances, etc. Epictetus is your man. He says, you know, they're not doing any better than this person who is making the best out of the poor hand that was dealt them. I'm reminded of my own favorite avocation, which is bridge, and you can feel just as good about, you know, making one heart with a very weak hand that's dealt to you as you can making 7-no trump with, you know, all the high cards in the deck. Right?
But that has something, Martin, to do with what you were smoking at the time when you were doing it.
Just a really quick comment. I'd just like to agree with that lady there on the question of meaning. And I think it could be argued that the search for purpose in our lives is probably a stronger drive than the search for pleasure or the search to do duty. Because up till now, the Aristotelian